Happy Arvo. Thank you for joining me. We've got Ned Kelly Part 2. Ned Kelly Part 2! Yesterday we went over Part 1. If you missed that, you got to go back. I'm sorry. You got to watch 2 videos. I was doing this. 2 videos. Anyway, we learned about Red Kelly. We learned about how Ned grew up in kind of a messed up childhood, had to be the man of the house at 14 years old. His dad was kind of a deadbeat. He got himself into some trouble. He found his way into the bush with some older buddies, some old man. And I think now we're getting into the good part where he puts on the helmet. So that was kind of his origin story. Pretty wild. And now I'm ready to finish it off with this video from, by the way, I just appreciate Feature History. Go check out their channel. Let's go.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Even remotely relevant Australia Day special on Ned Kelly.
Yeah.
When we left off, Ned and his gang just became outlaws and escaped to the Victorian bush. And if you're looking for more background than that, well, you should probably watch part 1.
That's what I said.
If you're waiting any longer, let's sink into this. The Kelly gang had swiftly become polarizing figures in Victoria. Most at the time saw them as nothing but the criminals they were. However, some, especially those local to the Kellys, bought into the idea of the boys being a resistance of the downtrodden. With those views, the bushrangers found themselves with sympathizers.
It's kind of cool.
Ned and friends could easily use their support to lay low and evade police indefinitely.
It does make me, it's so interesting back in these times, like how did these people even know about Ned Kelly without the internet and stuff? Like, it's just word of mouth, like going around like there's this guy with a can on his head and he's fighting the resistance.
But knowing they were already sentenced to hang if they were ever captured, it was decided they would attempt to make the most of their situation. In December of 1878, the gang would arrive at a sheep station in Faithfuls Creek, just outside the town of Euroa, and would take 22 people.
That's the most Australian thing I've ever heard.
Hostage for dinner and a sleepover. Strangely enough, the gang
It's the nicest hostage situation I've ever heard of.
2 people hostage for
I wanna
dinner
be a
and a
hostage.
sleepover. Strangely enough, the gang was mostly non-aggressive, and the hostages were quite hospitable. The next afternoon, Joe Byrne would watch over the captors as the rest of the gang rode to the National Bank. It was there they'd hold up the clerk and force the handover of over £2,000 in notes and gold, but while doing so, chatted to the man.
I'm not going to try, if you guys watched yesterday's video, I learned my lesson. I'm not going to try to convert that to today's money.
And his wife, and even
That
shared
was
a
a whole
drink
thing.
of whiskey. It was then back to the sheep station, tea was prepared, and the gang rode off into the night in one of the most polite and bizarre heists Australia had ever witnessed. The story quickly hit headlines, and this kind of behaviour was to become a hallmark of the Kelly gang. Robbing with a smile.
I see, so that's why they had
His
these
philosophy
followers.
didn't place him at odds with clerks or farmhands. It was the authorities, the squatters, and the government he had an issue with. So society's middlemen would be left unharmed, as the Kelly gang hit their enemies where it hurt, the wallet. So after the raid, the gang would go back to sheltering amongst their sympathisers, whether they be selectors, swagmen, or Aboriginal mobs. But the police soon cracked down on this, arresting a total of 23 people suspected of aiding the Kelly gang. The move meant to dissuade sympathisers.
So he almost had like a cult.
Backfired and painted the police as both draconic and incompetent. The gang members remained unaffected by the crackdown. The police still had no trail on them, and the Kellys were thorough in covering them. In early 1879, the gang...
There's just something alluring. I'm sorry for pausing so much, but there's just something alluring about the good old days when you could just cover your tracks. There's no cameras, no crap like that for the authorities to track you down.
And the Kellys were thorough in covering them.
If the people didn't want to tell
the
Popo where you were,
on a long pursuit of a believed informant, but by the time the wild goose chase came to an end, the members found themselves in New South Wales. They began the return home when they crossed by the settlement of Jerilderie. Noticing both its bank and its lack of many police, their conclusion on what to do.
That's the bank.
It was quite obvious. At midnight on the 8th of February, the gang snuck around the police barracks. Ned called out for the police, proclaiming a brawl at the nearby pub. Once the only 2 constables came out, they were held up and taken hostage. Their firearms, steeds, and uniforms were seized, and the gang escorted the police back to their beds and held out in the barracks until day.
At least they didn't kill him.
In keeping with the Kelly gang's hidden in plain sight heist style, Ned would escort the constable's wife, Mrs. Devine, to the courthouse to prepare mass. Dan and Hart would carry out police duties in uniform for the day, completely unnoticed. Later in the afternoon, the police hostages were transported to the Royal Hotel, where they and the hotel's patrons were taken hostage.
That's a
However,
treat.
Ned wasn't interested in establishing himself as a boss. Instead, Ned had a message to send to his hostages. A message that involved him charming them. The people were treated to drinks and conversation as Ned openly discussed his ambitions and beliefs. After, the gang travelled to the bank and claimed £2,141 in notes and coins. On top
Wow.
of this, they took the mortgage documents and burned them in an effort to erase local debt. And then
it's the thought that counts, I think. But I think that might have just messed up a lot of people more than it might have helped them. I'm not sure. Maybe it did. Maybe the bank was just like, you know what? Nothing we can do. No one has to pay their mortgage.
and made one last stop to the telegram office, cutting wires and burning telegrams, buying them time to escape. The gang
Wow.
then took off, leaving nothing to trail them but one thing: an 8,000-word letter written by Ned for the Drillery newsletter. It was his own manifesto of sorts. In the letter, it seemed to express
He's starting to get kind of a big head, huh?
what had started out as just fleeing the authorities had turned into some political fight for Ned. He decried the
Right.
tyrannism of English yoke, invoked the spirit of Irish rebellion, and promised he would claim revenge and retribution. The letter read like an IRA declaration, but Ned wasn't fighting for Ireland as a country. He saw it almost as a class. And class struggle and conflict applied as much to him, a first-generation Victorian, as it did a full-blooded Irishman. So after both another successful raid for
Crazy.
the Kelly gang and Ned's literary battle cry, the New South Wales government would place a bounty for £4,000 for Ned's capture or death, and the Victorian government quickly matched it, leading to Ned having altogether an £8,000 bounty on his head, the largest ever bounty on a bushranger. However, despite the record bounty and headlining articles, the Kelly gang simply disappeared for months. Despite their best efforts, the police could not track them. They even resorted to bringing in Queensland's indigenous black trackers to trail them, and the local
They're called black trackers because, well, okay.
Aboriginals wouldn't cooperate, and it only proved fruitless. It would be on the Kelly gang's own terms they re-entered the public eye, and Ned planned for it to be as dramatic as ever. The gang were going to take the fight directly to the police. Bern and Dan arrived at Aaron Sherritt's, a former Greta mob
I can't get over that strap. I already found it kind of like interesting that the English people wear the strap like around the front of the chin. This is just different.
member turned police informant. On the night
Just
of
seems like it would get in the way of breathing and it would itch.
June 26, 1880, Sherritt opened the door to be greeted by Byrne's gun, and was quickly shot dead. Sherritt's house was home to his wife, his mother-in-law, and 4 policemen who had been working from the home while scouting for the Kelly gang. When the gang had met them first, they hid in the bedroom and took the wife and mother-in-law in with them, dissuading Byrne and Dan from lighting the house up and being done with it. The pair would leave with 1 kill, and they expected a lot of attention to soon follow. Ned and Hart, on the same night, had ridden out to the town of Glenrowan and destroyed the local adjacent railroad. Then they rode through the town and rounded its occupants into the local hotel. And through the course of the next few hours, the public would become aware of Ned's plan. The shocking murder of Sherritt was planned to be shocking, catch the eyes of the public and the police. Ned knew in Melbourne awaited a train that could and would quickly carry half the Victorian police force straight to him. And so the rail was sabotaged. The train would be derailed down a...
Ned's not so dumb. You know? Like, you would think that this kid that grew up in the bush, abandoned by his father and stuff, raised by a convict, he's kind of, like, witty, you know?
Hill. The gang
That's some, like, V for Vendetta
had
type stuff.
brought with them their own homemade armor, and with it adorned,
Here it is, yes. Finally, the bucket.
they would meet the wreckage from atop the hill and slaughter the survivors. The police would be crippled, and the gang would bring carnage to the government and the elite. The plan was ambitious and horrifying in the magnitude of deaths. Dan and Byrne would unite with Ned and Hart at the hotel, and they waited and waited and waited some more for the train. The train had departed late. Sherritt's murder had, unknown to the gang, gone unreported for hours. The Glenrowan hostages began to tire, and so looking to remain in good favour, Ned allowed his sympathisers to return home for the night. However, Ned couldn't read minds. One sympathiser would make haste to the trail and warn the oncoming train of the gang's plans just a bit further up the track.
It was an inside job.
The train stopped, the division disembarked, and made their way to the hotel.
Nowadays, if you tried to flag down a train and be like, hey, I've got a message for you, I've got a warning, they'd be like, get on with it.
The gang didn't need to be told the train had seen the trap. They quickly adorned their armour, and the two sides met in the night. The Glenrowan Hotel was under siege. The shootout went for hours. The civilians were caught in the crossfire, but the most damning casualty for Ned would be when Byrne was downed. Shot through a wall as he, maybe
Not
fittingly,
Byrne.
toasted to their own bravery.
Oh, wow.
Byrne's death changed things. This didn't feel like a heroic stand against authority anymore. This was survival. Ned would sneak out from the hotel with the crowd.
Yeah, once you start waging a war on the police and you're cooped up in a
Of
hotel.
escaping hostages, making his way to the bush, leaving Dan and Hart
surprised he made
in
it
the
there.
fight. Volleys of fire, rest, and more fire continued on and on. The police doing their utmost to avoid casualties and, by extension, storming the hotel. They even telegraphed for a cannon to be sent up the rail.
No way.
By morning break, the mist gave way to Ned behind the police lines. He hadn't fled. He came back to make his point. He would die in
Ned.
defiance.
Wow.
Equipped with 2 revolvers, he fired, admittedly inaccurately, at the police.
They had to do Ned like that. They had to say inaccurately. Come on. Maybe it hit a few policemen. It hit them right in the badge.
His ability to both give and take fire quickly spread hysteria through the division. Some even claimed he was the legendary Bunyip. But Ned's
The legendary what?
hysteria through the division. Some even claimed he was the legendary Bunyip. But Ned's
Bunyip. All right, here we go again. Bunyip. Bunyip monster. No way. Well, here's my next video. I'm looking up about the Bunyip monster. Whoa, dude. That does not look anything like Ned, but hey. Could be the Bunyip monster with a bucket on his
undoing
head.
would be his unarmored legs, taken to the ground.
Wait, you're telling me that his bucket head actually stopped the bullets? I thought that was just Ned being a little naive. You're telling me they had to shoot him in the legs because that can on his head. What are they shooting? BBs?
By a well-placed shot. The same officer he had taken hostage from the town would quickly intervene after this,
How big
ordering
Ned
other
looks.
officers to stand
Like
down
7 feet tall?
and capture Ned alive. With Ned in custody, all fire had ceased by the hour.
Alive. I like that because, I mean, as much as, Ned, oh, I don't even know. I was gonna say he has some redeeming qualities, and I'm not sure about that. But it's kind of funny how he came back to die fighting for his cause, and he didn't die.
Afternoon.
Sorry,
the
Ned.
last of the hostages had left the hotel, and the building was burned down. The bodies of Dan and Hart, showing signs of suicide, were recovered from the building alongside Burns. The police
Wow.
had suffered no casualties in the shootout,
Oh.
and now held the £8,000 bounty in their custody, ready to transport him to court.
Oh, Ned
Ned
got
stood
wrecked.
trial before the Supreme Court in Melbourne throughout October
look at that beard.
1880. It would be a jury that decided Ned's guilty verdict.
So maybe this is actually over there on the left. Maybe that's where they wear the thing. Not pressed up against the nose. Okay, sorry for that.
And Ned himself agreed, saying no juryman could have given any other verdict. Ned didn't, or at least didn't show any fear for his death. He accepted his sentence to be hanged until death without resistance.
Hey,
However, his
that's
sympathizers
honorable.
didn't accept
After you kill a bunch of people.
it. Melbourne would see thousands turn out in protest, and a petition for clemency received over 32,000 signatures. But it made no difference.
Okay, now I need to know. That's interesting. I need to know. Is this guy like the people's hero? I can't tell. Like, was the government back then, were the police really oppressive? I don't have all the context to the story. You know what I mean? Maybe Ned is actually like a legend.
Received over 32,000 signatures, but it made no difference. On the
32,000, that's a lot. You know, nowadays you go on the internet to whatever.gov and sign your petition and sign it 400 times with a different name. Back then you had to go like with a pen and paper door to door, maybe a feather.
11th of November, in the Melbourne jail, Ned was brought before the noose, and for his last words only muttered, "Such is life." Or maybe he didn't. He was then hanged
We'll say he did.
until death. It would only be some time
Until death. That makes it sound like it took a while.
after Ned's death that a royal commission was launched into the issues that the Kelly gang fought. Many officers would be censored, reprimanded, demoted, suspended, or dismissed as
Wow, look at
corruption
that.
was stamped out in
Oh,
Victoria.
wow.
It was a small but noted redress. Ned was never able to hit the authorities like
So Ned won.
he wanted, but he did succeed in touching the spirits of people across Australia. To this day, Ned remains an Australian legend, a rather misunderstood and polarizing one, but a legend nonetheless.
Wow. Interesting. So he did actually. The only problem is he killed like 3 people that weren't necessarily, you know, like his direct oppressors. I mean, they sort of were his direct. I don't know. I don't know what I think about it, guys. I really don't. I don't want to disgrace the legend of Ned, the Buckethead Ned. But very interesting story regardless. I'm definitely going to make a video tomorrow about the bunyip, so subscribe if you want to watch that. The lore of Australia goes deep, and I am here to make my way down that ladder, all the way to the depths. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Yeah, you like the video? I don't know. Go to this channel. I mean, I pretty much like they made this whole freaking video. That's an awesome video. Good job, feature history. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.